It's 2018, y'all. I hope you all had a wonderful time celebrating the end of 2017, the beginning of a new calendar year. I'm, of course, your host, Will Robinson Smith, host of Old, New, and Now Playing. Thank you so much for joining me today on what is my first top 10 review of the year, looking back on all the great films that we had in 2017. Now, I realize this is coming out a little bit later than some of the other critics' 2017 lists, and that's because some of the ones that I really wanted to try to incorporate into my list, they weren't playing here around me in Huntsville, and so I took some of the time when I was back home in Sacramento to watch some of those movies to try to incorporate those into my list, if I felt like they should be on the list to begin with. And before you jump in the comments section, once you see my top 10 list, there were some that I just was not able to get to, so I don't want to hear a whole diatribe about, well, Will, why isn't the Phantom Thread in your list? And how could you not include The Darkest Hour? It was amazing. Shush. Okay, it'll be fine. My top 10 list is going to be different than your top 10 list. It's going to be different than Joe somebody's list, you know, that is elsewhere on YouTube. That's totally fine. All film is subjective, so all of our lists are going to be completely separate. There may be some overlap, I'm sure, but, you know, to each their own, so this is my top 10 list. And before we get into the main event, as it were, let me run down a couple of honorable mentions that really enjoyed, but just couldn't quite crack the top 10, so check it out. Here are my honorable mentions. Wind River was a really compelling film that looked at revenge and fatherhood, all wrapped up in a murder mystery package with great writing and acting. If you want to see a mini Avengers crossover, Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen star in this film with an amazing supporting cast beside them. Wonder Woman was such an important film this year, finally giving us a well-done, female-led superhero that felt like a solid war film as well. Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins were a powerhouse team. Cannot wait for the sequel coming in 2019. Oh man, The Greatest Showman is one that I have to watch at least 2 more times in the theater. It has one of the best soundtracks of the year, gave us a Broadway Wolverine, which is simply the best. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri had some really powerhouse performances from all the cast and was easily one of the best ensembles of the year. And speaking of strong ensembles, it pains me not to include it on this list. I really didn't know what to expect going into the movie, and I'm not really a horror fan, but this hit all the right buttons for me. It was scary enough to be enjoyable, but not terrifying. It had a perfect actor to portray Pennywise, and the crop of kids that they put together were fantastic. Cannot wait again for the sequel to come out in the very near future, and to see who they will cast as the grown-up versions of those kids. And now to the main event, number 10. Coming in at number 10 is The Disaster Artist. The look behind the curtain on how one of the best, worst films of all time came to be is one that I was really looking forward to, and it exceeded my expectations. The Franco brothers were a fantastic on-screen pairing, and you could tell how much time and care Franco put into his research. It shows that even if your dream doesn't turn out the way you planned, well, it can still be a gem to millions in a way that you can never imagine. Number 9. Shape of Water was one of the most recent films I saw last year. It was such a poetic love story and adds to the growing list of cinematic fairy tales from the mind of Guillermo del Toro. From the creature design to the chemistry between the aqua creature and Elisa Esposito, played wonderfully by Sally Hawkins, this film has so much to offer and will be a charming movie to revisit in the future. Number 8. My brother's favorite superhero of all time and mine in the cinematic landscape swung back onto the big screen in a big way, making his debut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Spider-Man was back this year, and man, I loved it. Tom Holland is now the person I'll think of when Spider-Man comes to mind. Not only did they really key into the duality of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but we got a fun supporting cast of high schoolers and arguably one of the top 3 MCU villains in Michael Keaton's Vulture.
You walk through those doors, you forget any of this happened. And don't you ever interfere with my business again.
Plus, it set up some great stories beyond Avengers 4. Tom Holland really nails the awkwardness of Peter Parker, but is also quick-witted and quippy when it comes to being Spider-Man, and you can really tell how much fun he has when he's donning the suit, both as the actor and as the character of Spider-Man. Number 7. If you watched my recent review of Lady Bird, you knew this was going to be somewhere on this list. I can't leave off a movie featuring my hometown of Sacramento. Plus, it also tells a rich mother-daughter story full of believable love and heartbreak, and a possible Oscar-worthy performance by Saoirse Ronan. On top of that, it put director Greta Gerwig on my radar, so I'll really be looking forward to whatever she does next. Number 6. The Big Sick was a movie that really wasn't on my radar at all until I started hearing some good word of mouth about it. I saw it on a whim and I was so glad I did. It's a charming love story with a meet the parents premise that goes in some really unexpected directions. The relationship between Kumail and Emily, played by Kumail Nanjiani and Zoe Kazan, was one of the best on-screen romances this year and felt so genuine and true to life. It popped up in the summer, but hopefully it will come back into contention when Academy Award nominations roll around. Number 5. Starting off the top 5 is a movie that, to me, is hands down the best superhero movie this year, and one that I really hope at least is in the conversation, if not in one of the actual 10 Best Picture nominees in the Academy Awards, and that's Logan. When they were talking about a Western-esque R-rated version of the Wolverine character, well, that sounded awesome. The first trailer floored a lot of people, and then we saw the movie. Both Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman gave some of the best performances of their careers in this, and it's easily the best superhero movie of the year. Hugh Jackman once again completely embodies the character of Logan and steps up the performance in a way that we haven't seen before in any of the other X-Men movies. Number 4. Number 4 is an entry by a new director, but not someone new to the movie-making business at all. I'm talking about Aaron Sorkin, who is the writer and director of Molly's Game. I definitely had high hopes going into this movie, and the reason it hits so high on my list is because it really matched what I hoped Sorkin could do in the director's chair. The pacing was fantastic, everyone had really good chemistry on screen, and it gave me hope for what Sorkin will do next when he's behind the director's chair in the next go-around. Number 3. Now this movie I was kind of tepidly walking into. The marketing campaign really didn't capture me at all. It really just rested on the name Pixar and the fact that for the most part, they basically have not disappointed me for their entire pantheon of films, and so I figured this one will probably be good too, and hey, it landed at number 3 on my list, so you know what's great. Fantastic that it rounded out the trilogy too. I'm talking about Cars 3. I'm kidding. I'm talking about Coco. Like I said, I honestly wasn't that impressed with the marketing going into the movie, but the movie did what Pixar does. It pulls you wholeheartedly into the story, and when you're just getting comfortable with where it's going, then it flips that around and tugs on your heartstrings all at the same time. Plus, it gave those of us who aren't as familiar a glimpse into the Mexican culture, which was really cool. Number 2. Oh man, these last 2 spots were really tough. Honestly, I sat there looking at my list and the movies that I was considering, going back and forth between the number 1, the number 2, the number 2, the number 1. It was basically a coin flip in my mind because obviously for my first top 10 list and every other subsequent top 10 list, I don't want to have a tie for number 1. That's a huge cop-out, that's weak sauce. Wasn't going to do that to you, so came down to it. If you ask me tomorrow, my answer might change because I might flip this one to 1 and 1 to 2, but today, as I'm making this movie, my number 2 on my top 10 of 2017 is Baby Driver. I absolutely loved this movie. I was sold in the first scene of this thing. Director Edgar Wright brought everything he has showcased in earlier films to this movie and really brought us something special. Between the fast-paced editing, the amazing syncopation between the action and the music was so perfect and so on point, it blew my mind. Honestly, if this doesn't win or at least get nominated for Best Editing, that will be a crying shame. Number 1. And that brings us to my number 1 movie of 2017. Maybe a surprise for some, not so much for others. I'm talking about Get Out.
Now, sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
Peele's simultaneous subversion of many horror tropes combined with its social commentary were eminently enjoyable. It's a movie that's complex and layered and offers a different yet equally entertaining experience when you watch it the second time.
I believe they've been abducting black people, brainwashing them, making them work for them as sex slaves and shit. Oh, sorry about the shit.
The writing is incredible. It just has so many dimensions and makes it eminently rewatchable. It's one that I had to own on Blu-ray, and it today makes my number 1 movie of 2017. So that's my top 10 list of 2017. It wasn't a great year for blockbusters, but overall it was a wonderful year for cinema. Some real gems of films came out this year, and hopefully once the Academy Award nominations roll around in a couple of weeks, we'll see some of the earlier films from last year pop up, things like Big Sick, Get Out, Logan. Hopefully some of the smaller ones won't be forgotten once award season rolls around, so definitely looking forward to all of that. And before you ask in the comments section, just want to say right now that unfortunately there will not be a worst top 10 or top 10 worst list for 2017. The reason for that being is because unfortunately, or fortunately for me, I didn't feel like I saw enough of the really bad films last year to give you guys a good representation of what the worst of the worst would have been. It would be like maybe a top 5, and even then I don't think that would really be representative for you. So there won't be that list this year. Look for one at the end of 2018 though. I'll be sure to watch a whole bunch more things now that I have Movie Pass for the entire year. I'll be checking out as many movies as possible. That will include some real stinkers. So the bombs of 2018, look out for those at the end of next year. And now I really want to see what is on your top 10 list. Obviously, it's going to be different than mine, probably. So throw it in the comments section. Let's talk about some of our favorite films of the year. What are some that you thought should have been on my list, were not on my list? Let's start that discussion. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been a fun 2017. 2018 is going to be packed full of even more movie reviews, vlog posts, trailer reactions, a whole bunch of other things coming for you in the new year. Be posting an update on the channel in the near future, get to a little more of the details of that, but we'll save that for another video. So thank you as always for watching, and let's start that countdown to Black Panther. Oh man, it's the movie I'm looking forward to most coming up first.